Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 19th February 2016. The first article is related to Nepal. Let us have a brief background about the things that have happened in the last 1 year. Nepal has constituted a new constitution assembly, and after the KP Oli's government has come into existence, this Constitution Assembly has given a most progressive rights-based constitution. But however, the Madhesis, Janjatis and their role in the future state process of the Nepal was very limited. An agitation started on the plains where the Madhesis dominate. And these plains are the connecting link between India and Nepal. And Nepal being a landlocked country, it is dependent on India for its supplies. So finally the agitation from Madhesis has led to the disconnect for the goods and supplies between India and Nepal. And Nepal criticized India of the blockade and raised the issue at the Geneva summit. On the other hand, India said it is not the country which is blocking the transfer or movement of the goods and services. It is the agitation and lack of security. The truckers are not interested to enter into Nepal. In this context, a backdoor diplomatic efforts were undertaken to end the blockade, and recently the foreign minister of Nepal has visited India, and Prime Minister Mr. Oli is about to visit. So in this context, India also got certain assurances related to the Madhesis, and after the earthquake, India has promised for total $1 billion of reconstruction effort. And during Prime Minister Modi's visit to Nepal in 2014, India has promised for another $1 billion. Added to that, India has many ongoing power and irrigation projects in Nepal. So in this context, from very cultural perspective and open borders India and Nepal share with each other, these have something called as a strategic implication for India. And similarly, Nepal is dependent on India. In this context, the relations becomes much important. Though Nepal repeatedly plays the Chinese card, it still has the dependency on India, and the movement of goods and services from China has their own limitations through Tibet. So finally, what we can say is these are two neighbors and their relations are quite important for each other. So this article analyzes the background of these issues, how we shall go forward on this. Now, the tree in the forest. Now if you see, the Constitution Assembly that has come into existence has got more than 78%, 85% of the Constitution Assembly members, which was constituted through 78% of the people mandate, has its acceptance. So it means the Constitution Assembly is legitimate, and the Constitution is also expected to be legitimate. But however, the provincial separation and providing for citizenship rights, participation in the government and the state process was very much limited to the Madhesis. So in this context, India took on to the side of the Madhesis and did not welcome the constitution of Nepal with open hands. So Nepal has constructed this as an infringement on its sovereignty, and anti-Indianism became a slogan in Nepal. In this context, there is something to blame on Nepal's side and something to blame on to the Indian reaction too. So this big brotherly attitude has finally led to the suffering of the long or 50 plus years of relationships which are established with huge confidence and trust between these countries. So in this context, what the author argues is this: the Nepal government immediately has to take up a provincial demarcation once the heat gets settled. And the second thing is the panchayat elections, which are long overdue, which are the strongest institutions in Nepal. Elections shall be held to them so that the governance comes to normal. And finally, India also shall realize that the Nepal and its sovereignty, it is very much in the self-interest of India. So a peaceful, stable Nepal will facilitate a good relationship with India, and the strategic interests will be better satisfied. Now, Arunachal Pradesh saga. Now, the Supreme Court, it has paved the way for end of the president's rule and also reinstallation of the popular government. So, in this context, new complexities are arising in this issue. Congress argues that Nabam Tuki's government, that is, which is already was in power before it was dismissed, it has to be reinstated. On the other hand, governor shall be given a new opportunity to call for the government based on the situation. So now, the speaker, he has disqualified the defected members from the Congress. So in this context, if this disqualification is valid under Schedule 10 of the Constitution, then the government or else the opposition which is going to form the government will not have the sufficient majority in the House. On the other hand, if this disqualification is not valid, then the opposition can continue with a safe majority in the House. So how this issue has to be resolved, and it again brings in the governor's office and its role in Indian politics onto the forefront. So gay rights, let's take a brief history. Now across the world, there is a movement towards the expansion of the rights of the people. But in India, exceptionally, there is a diminution or there is backward movement on these rights. Already we have discussed enough on this. Let's take a brief. Now, Delhi High Court, it has said that the section 377 that legitimizes the sexual behavior against the natural order, that criminalizes the sexual behavior against the natural order, now as invalid and against to the Constitution. So after this, the Supreme Court has reversed this judgment, and finally the matter was shifted towards the constitutional bench. So in this case, now what is the way forward? So we can say that the sexuality is a personal space of an individual where the state shall not have any business to do with. So in this context, the section 377 it's itself a draconian aspect that is leading to the violation of the rights, exploitation, spread of HIV, etc. The modern medical literature also proves that the gender or gay relationships are just a different kind of a gender orientation rather than a medical disease pattern. So in this context, the Supreme Court shall move forward towards the expansion of the rights of these LGBTs. And Supreme Court already in National Legal Services Authority case has said that so the expansion of the recognizing them as the third gender, there has to be enough space provided for their development. Now, landmark for Indian scientists. Now if you see, the gravitational waves are discovered, and the discovery of the electromagnetic spectrum, it has created for a new wave of opportunities for the world. Similarly, these gravitational waves are expected to do the same in the long run. So India did not have LIGO-like establishment till before, and it was pending before the government. So now India is going to bring in its LIGO, that is India LIGO, which is called Indigo. So the LIGO stands for Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. So the Indigo is going to be a similar thing, and government gave its approval. So recently government also gave approval for the establishment of a neutrino observatory in Tamil Nadu. So with these developments, India's foothold on scientific research is bound to increase. Now if you see India's participation in LIGO, though it appears to be significant, but we can say that it is mostly at the theoretical level. So in this context, providing for these particular research opportunities can bring in a huge advantage to India in the long run. Coming to the Li-Fi. So this may not be covered in the Delhi's newspaper, but it is very much important with regard to the science and technology issues are concerned. Now an LED bulb in your house can transmit the internet acting as a modem. So as of now, Wi-Fi routers, everything they are transmitting the signals along electromagnetic spectrum. So the spectrum is relatively less, but the natural light or visible light spectrum is too broad. So in this context, Wi-Fi provides for a high-speed data connectivity and whatever the hazards that exist with the radio frequency that do not exist with the Wi-Fi. But what is the problem? It cannot transmit across the rooms, because one way it is an advantage because the leakage of information can be avoided. On the other way, it cannot cover the wider areas. And the second thing is the night time light may not be available. How to handle the situation then? So these solutions, if they are found, it can be a very good alternative or can provide a solution towards the digital connectivity in India. Coming to the Prime Minister Fasal Bima Yojana. Already I have discussed this article in detail. In this week I will make a special topic article on this, because agricultural insurance is such a topic where how this evolved in India, what are its problems, how we are going to improve that we need to understand. What is this cap? There is no cap under the Prime Minister Fasal Bima Yojana. And next is the uniform premium. Previously premiums varied as per the risk vulnerability of a particular crop. And now, irrespective of the risk faced by the crop, the premium is going to be one and the same. And finally, the post-harvest losses are also covered under the Fasal Bima Yojana. So these improvements are going to provide for a security of income to the farmer. And coming to the United States-Cuba relationships, you know that, let us know some history. So the Batista government, it was supported by United States, and people revolution in Cuba under leadership of Fidel Castro finally overthrew this government. And from then onwards, the relationships are very much soured between Cuba and United States of America. So in this context, from 2014 onwards, we can say the Obama government has revived its relationship, opened the embassies, and the Secretary of State has visited the Cuba. So in this case, the President Obama is also about to make a visit to Cuba. So the Cuba embargo, it means the trade embargo imposed on the Cuba after the Cuban nuclear crisis is about to be removed now by this year end. So the US-Cuba relationships are increasing for better, and in this context, we have to remember this Helms-Burton Act, which is passed by United States, which has authorized for the imposition of trade embargo. So this is about United States-Cuba relations. Thank you very much. All the best.